smoke poured out of the sadness chimneys and hung over the city like bad news. In the depths of the city, beyond an old zone of ruined buildings that looked like broken hearts, there lived a happy young fellow by the name of Haroun, the only child of the storyteller Rashid Khalifa, whose cheerfulness was famous throughout that unhappy metropolis, and whose never-ending streams of tall, short, and winding tales had earned him not one, but two nicknames. To his admirers, Rashid was
the ocean of notions,
and to his jealous rivals, he was
the Shah of Blah.
To his wife, Soraya, Rashid was for many years as loving a husband as anyone could wish for. And during these few years, Haroun grew up in a home where instead of miseries and frowns, he had his father's ready laughter and his mother's sweet voice raised in song. La, 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 la.
Then something went wrong.
Soraya stopped singing in the middle of a line as if someone had thrown a switch.
Rashid Khalifa was so busy making up and telling stories he didn't even notice.
But then Rashid was a busy man, in constant demand. He was
the ocean of notions,
the famous
Shah of Blah.
Haroun often thought of his father as a juggler, because his stories were really lots of different tales juggled together, and he kept them going in a kind of dizzy whirl and never made a mistake.
Where do these stories come from? From the great story sea. Glug, glug, glug. I drink the story waters, and then I feel full of steam.
Where do you keep this hot water?
It comes out of an invisible tap, installed by one of the water genies.
I've never seen a water genie.
You're never up in time to see the milkman, but you don't mind drinking the milk. You have to be a subscriber.
And how do you become a subscriber?
Well, that's much too complicated to explain. Now kindly desist from this ifing and budding, and be happy with the stories you enjoy.
Why don't you have more children?
We used up our full quota of child stuff just in making you. It's all packed in there. Enough for maybe 4, 5 kiddies. Yes, sir, there's more to you than the blinking eye can see.
We try. This child business is not an easy thing. Think of the poor Senguptas. The Senguptas lived upstairs.
Mr. Sengupta was a clerk in the office of the city's corporation, and he was as sticky thin and whiny voiced and mingy as his wife, Anita, was generous and loud and wobbly fat. The Senguptas had no children at all, and as a result, Anita Sengupta paid more attention to Haroun than he really cared for. Mr. Sengupta ignored Haroun, but was always talking to Soraya.
That husband of yours, he's got his head stuck in the air and his feet off the ground. What are all these stories? Life is not a storybook or a joke shop. All this fun will come to no good. What's the use of stories that aren't even true? What's the use of stories that aren't even true?
Haroun couldn't get that terrible question out of his head. Haroun's mother, Soraya, had run off with Mr. Sengupta.
At 11 a.m. precisely, she had sent Rashid into Haroun's room to search for some missing socks. Rashid heard the front door slam, and an instant later, the sound of a car in the lane. He returned to the living room to find his wife gone and a taxi speeding round the corner. The clock still stood at 11 o'clock exactly. Rashid picked up a hammer and smashed everything in the house.
or to be precise, for 11 minutes at a time.
11 o'clock when his mother exited. Now comes this problem of 11 minutes. The cause is located in his psychology. Owing to his psychological sadness, the young mistress stuck fast to his number 11 and cannot get to 12.
That's not true. Soraya had left a note. You are only interested in pleasure, but a proper man would know that life is a serious business. Your brain is full of make-believe, so there is no room in it for facts. Mr. Sengupta has no imagination at all. This is okay by me. Tell Haroun I love him, but I can't help it. I have to do this now. What to do, son? Storytelling is the only word I know.
What's the point of it? What's the point of stories that aren't even true?
Haroun wanted to take those words out of his father's ears and shove them back into his own mouth. But of course, he couldn't. And that is why he blamed himself when
An unthinkable thing happened.
rah, rah, rah. Rah, rah, rah. Rah, rah, rah. Rah, rah!
Rah, rah, rah.
It was almost election time, and it was well known that nobody ever believed anything a Politico said.
But everyone had complete faith in Rashid. Because he always admitted that everything he told them was completely untrue. So the politicos needed Rashid's help to win the people's votes.
Some days later, Rashid Khalifa was invited by the politicos of the town of G, near the valley of K, which nestled in the mountains of M.
We should go. In the town of G and the valley of K, the weather is still fine. Whereas here, the air is too weepy for words.
Tip-top plan. Do both of you go. It will be like a little holiday. And don't need to worry about me sitting all by myself. They were met at the train station by two unsmiling men.
They look like villains to me.
The two men drove Rashid and Haroun straight to the political rally.
Rashid went out on stage in front of that vast crowd.
Haroun watched from the wings.
The poor storyteller opened his mouth and found it was as empty as his heart.
Ark! 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 Ark!
The Shah of Blah sounded like a stupid crow.
The two men accused Rashid of having taken a bribe from their rivals.
And suggested that they might cut off his tongue and other items also.
And Rashid, close to tears, kept repeating that he couldn't understand why he had dried up, and promising to make it up to them. In the valley of K, I will be terrifico, magnifique.
Better you are, or out comes that tongue from your lying throat.
So what does the plain mean for K?
Plain? Plain? His papa's stories won't take off, but the brat wants to fly. No claim for you, master and study. Catch a blasted bus.
Overtakers end up sick, that undertakers, all the dangers
and into the tunnel of fire, which was also known as J.
When the road emerged from the tunnel, the traveler saw before him the beauty of the sun setting over the valley of K, with its golden fields and silver mountains, and with the dull lake at its heart. A view spread out like a magic carpet, waiting for someone to take a ride.
No man can be sad who looks upon that sight, Rashid had said. Front row seat to the mail coach, all the way to the dull lake, through the passive H and into the tunnel of fire, which was also known as J, before sunset.
But the hour is already late.
Otherwise the whole point will be lost.
But, so what? The beautiful view to cheer up the sad dad. No problem.
So when Rashid finally stepped out of the ticket office, he found Haroun waiting for him on the steps of the mail coach, with the best seats reserved inside and the motor running. As I may have mentioned, young Haroun Khalifa, more to you than meets the blinking eye.
Yahoo! Varoo!
Don't we need to stop for the letters? Do we need to go so blinking fast?
Need to stop? Need to go so quickly? Well, needs a slippery snake, that's what it is. The boy here says that you, sir, need a view before sunset, and maybe it's so and maybe no. And some might say that the boy here needs a mother